everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex. Yet again, this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Monday. It is Mark Silvestri Day. That is why we are looking at Wolverine number 48, the next issue in his run from the early 90s on Wolverine before he moved on to Image and Cyberforce. This is issue 48, cover dated November 1991. And as indicated here on the cover, it is the sequel to Weapon X. Just going to clue you in onto my kind of specific entry into comic books. By the time I was reading this, I had kind of skipped over Weapon X. I didn't really know anything about that when I read this issue originally as a kid. Obviously, I'd fill in the gaps later on. So there were aspects of this, because I knew nothing about Weapon X, that were kind of mysterious to me, and I had no idea exactly what was going on. The main one, kind of like, I understood this concept of Wolverine having been experimented on, and the adamantium was bonded to his skeleton. At that point, you know, that's all we really knew. The specific process and how it happened, you know, as I said, was kind of elaborated on a little bit in Weapon X, but it was still fairly mysterious. So I understood the experimental part of that and his flashbacks in this issue and things like that. The thing that baffled me were these spikes here. I don't know if that's artistic license. Obviously, he's going to be hallucinating and having flashbacks and things like that, so things might be a little bit surreal and different. A few issues ago with Sabretooth and Wolverine, they were hallucinating. They were getting some of this imagery here, wires and things, kind of hearkening back to the Weapon X experimentation they were subjected to. And for some reason, because it was kind of a psychedelic mindfuck kind of state, and they were hallucinating heavily, they had spikes kind of jutting out, and maybe Mark Silvestri just carried that over to this storyline here. So we're starting over fresh here with a new storyline. This is the Shiva scenario part 1. And this is another kind of high point in Mark Silvestri's art. We are in around a peak Mark Silvestri as well in his run on Wolverine, and I feel like, you know, the art that you're going to see inside here is pretty close and reminiscent to the art you see in the first few Cyberforce issues, at least in that first miniseries, where, you know, slowly, I've talked about this before, Mark Silvestri moves more towards the kind of, I'll go this way, West Coast, Homage Studios, kind of slick inking look, Scott Williams, Jim Lee kind of influence, where here it's still a little gruff and rough, which I like, and those early issues of Cyberforce as well. So there is a period where those were kind of, Silvestri was working on Wolverine and Cyberforce at the same time. I'm not 100% sure. I know Eric Larson did a little bit of that. Maybe a few of the Image guys did that. I think even Rob Liefeld may have done that a little bit. So it seemed to have been like kind of a common thing, right? Because a lot of them, you know, they kind of finished their last Marvel issue, and their first Image issue was pretty much ready to go. I mean, almost, right? There might have been a few months there, but it was pretty darn quick. So there's definitely some overlap with some of those guys. And I think right now we're close to, if not at the beginning of that overlap period for Mark Silvestri between Wolverine and Cyberforce, and peak Silvestri as far as his art goes. Great cover, Savage Wolverine, right? I love this as a kid. The cover sold me alone on it. You've got the Weapon X elements, and again, like I said, those weird spikes that we're going to look more at once we open up this issue. And again, the sequel to Weapon X, so definitely a continuation from that. Now knowing that storyline, a lot of this makes more sense. Starts off pretty cool. I like this kind of this is the cinema kind of panel, I guess you would call, in comic books. He varies the size and stuff, but, you know, it's a cinematic approach, you know, made kind of popular in the late 90s, early 2000s by Frank Quitely, at least at that time, and others, not just him. And that has kind of become quite a staple, I think, with most Marvel and DC comics nowadays in the mainstream, where they are trying to give the comics a cinematic feel. I feel like maybe missing out on some of the better elements of comic book storytelling. So obviously in this comic, not, you know, something that he's sticking to, just kind of an intro here. Like I said, gives the feel of a movie, and then we bust open with the pinup page here, right? Cool shot of Wolverine having broken down this fence, and he's on the search for, you know, clues to his origins. So this site here, which is abandoned in the Canadian wilderness, pretty sure they're up in Alberta, if I'm not mistaken, kind of jogs his memory, and he knows that he was here at some point, right? And that's basically the storyline here, looking for clues to his past, right? We've got the same old creative team that's been doing great work up to this point. Larry Hama, got to give it to him. He's been on this title for a bit. He's done the run with Silvestri, and later on will stay for quite a few more issues after this Silvestri run. So he's quite the workhorse when it comes to Wolverine. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that, because I do find most of these Wolverine stories pretty darn entertaining and pretty good compared to maybe other stuff I'm reviewing, like, for example, New Mutants and The Incredible Hulk, which I'm less engaged in story-wise, right? But Larry Hama, I think, tells a good yarn, generally. Very kind of pulp feel, and Wolverine, I think he humanizes him a bit, and it doesn't exaggerate the power set either, which is good. Some of these modern guys now, the Wolverine's powers, he's basically like Superman, and I've never seen him at that level, you know what I mean? It's better when Wolverine's an underdog and maybe not quite that strong, and maybe doesn't heal necessarily as quickly as we'd like him to. Anyways, I digress. So Larry Hama script, Mark Silvestri pencils, Dan Green inks, Pat Brosseau lettering, and Steve Buccellato coloring. Same creative team, hasn't changed, and the book still looks great. They're really into a groove here. Silvestri's kicking ass on the art. The title is also no longer bi-weekly, so no longer 2 issues a month, only 1 issue. They're back to a regular kind of monthly schedule, so I feel like the art has a bit of more of a chance to breathe, I guess, generally, and Silvestri isn't rushing it quite as much. So these particular issues, 48, 49, 50, I think are really kind of a nice run there for the art and this story, which I find interesting. Again, especially back when I was a kid, you know, now a lot's been revealed about Wolverine since then, since here, but, you know, we're right at the beginnings of kind of scratching at his origin, trying to figure out what that mysterious past is all about, which, as I said, later we'll learn way more about, right? But this is kind of the beginning, right after Weapon X. He finds some claw marks here. That's interesting that he's, you know, been there before. So he's wondering if they're trying to stop things from getting out or getting in, right? And Jubilee, as she goes around, love this shot here. Just a clever little, you know, rollerblades, very 90s, obviously, in the foreground here. But the way he has, you know, the one up here and the one down here, the wheels kind of popping out of the frame there and pushing forward into the foreground, I think is awesome. Really nice touch there. And that just helps to give more depth and make the page more interesting, right? Silvestri still kind of using, back many reviews ago when I said he was influenced by Mignola, I feel like he's still using the silhouette idea, but he's adapted it to where it's a little less angular and more representative of just his current style and the current kind of combination of curves and angles, I guess, that he uses. Maybe this shot down here is more Mignola, right? And these kind of hatching lines here, there's still a little bit of that left, but he, you know, more in a, he uses it well, is all I'll say, I guess. Great page design, still getting a good storytelling flow. So they discover a car here stashed away, and Wolverine obviously has a flashback. And again, now I know that this scene harkens back to Weapon X as well, right? This is, I think, a sequence of when he gets kidnapped in Weapon X. I didn't know this car was in Weapon X specifically. I imagine it's a specific car because it's, again, I have to guess this is photo referenced for sure, just to get all those details down because it's such a specific kind of car and make and model, right? Don't know if you can get away with that today. Usually, like, there's like, it seems like now you really do have to kind of create a generic car or car that's kind of like, you know, let's say you want to draw a Beetle, you know, you change 1 or 2 aesthetic elements and you call it, you know, the Scarab or something, just because for legal purposes and things, you might get sued for using a copyrighted term or name for a car or a make or a model or a brand. Back in the good old 90s, you didn't have to worry about that stuff, not just quite yet. That would come soon, though. Yeah, really digging this overlapping panels here in the layouts. It feels like he's taking maybe a little bit of a page out of the McFarlane book now. He's doing the thick border here, which is a very 90s trope that we talk a lot about here. But yeah, just the dynamics of the images and the storytelling is great. Silvestri's a master just of the human figure, overall, different positions, angles, body language. He's got it all here, which he loses a bit and gets a little stiffer with the Jim Lee stuff later, or the Jim Lee style. But again, this is why, to me, this is kind of peak Silvestri. I mean, you know, fairly realistic too. This is almost, you can almost pick out the scene in like an X-Men movie or something, you know? Almost Hugh Jackman-ish. So Wolverine's getting pistol whipped in this flashback, and that's where we're brought back to the present. And, you know, Jubilee's like, hey, you okay? Obviously, Wolverine's acting strange, a little stranger than usual. So basically, this whole issue is, you know, a bit of a memory lane for Wolverine, who can't exactly remember all that stuff, but is getting just quick flashes like he does here, right, to the actual Weapon X, which is a great drawing. I'm going to flip that around just so you can see. Before I do, though, I do want to mention this panel I find odd. I get the uplighting and stuff, but it just doesn't work for me, where the lighting is effective, the angle, everything. It just, to me, doesn't look like Wolverine. But sometimes with uplighting, we do get weird effects on our faces. So, you know, I guess Silvestri maybe photo referenced that or something to get the right effect. Yeah, this great shot of Wolverine here in this kind of Weapon X feral mode, right? Very Windsor Smith style. Longer mane, all that tech hanging from him. But look throughout here, like there's I would, you know, with this style, what I think would be great is I'd love to see Silvestri draw like Aliens or something, or some sort of Aliens one-shot or miniseries. Like, I find the way he does the debris here and the lighting just works really well. And I get that alien vibe from this panel here. So yeah, we get a lot of, we're starting to see more anchor panels as well on some pages, right? So we got quite a few panels here, which is great, good storytelling. Here's where the spikes start coming in, so it's like, you know, it's a bit of a surreal thing, like I said, psychedelic, hallucinatory, right? This whole flashback, kind of similar to when he was drugged a few issues ago. So, like, when I was 12 years old, I had no idea what surrealism was, right? Like the art movement, or just the idea of the, you know, stuff that's impossible. And, you know, most sci-fi project into the future, things that we can't do yet. Most of that is, to a certain extent, surrealism. We're projecting, we're doing things that are, you know, impossible in our present reality, I guess is how I put it, or just doing really crazy stuff. Like Salvador Dali, obviously, if you don't know about him, Google him. He's kind of the most well-known surrealist artist. You know, just sometimes people will say it's nonsense and things, but it's, you know, it's what leads to fantasy and sci-fi storytelling. The very basis of it is surrealism, right? Most comic books are surreal in the sense that, yes, we accept that Wolverine, you know, has a healing factor as a mutant, has been injected with metal. But I mean, all of that is very sci-fi and surreal, and could not, for, you know, at least at this point, you know, in time, exist in our present reality, right? So, you know, a man who flies, Superman, that's surreal, right? And those are kind of tamer examples of surrealism, right? It can get really crazy. Check out the Europeans and how far they go with that. Or someone like David Lynch with his movies, right? And they're kind of non-linear, and maybe, you know, the storyline is not so obvious in most of his movies, I would say, except for maybe Dune. But that's what we're dealing with here. So, you know, 12-year-old me is kind of confused and finds it just weird. You know, 40-plus-year-old me right now, going to be 44 soon, in December, really appreciates surrealism now. I've learned about it more, and it's, you know, I've applied its techniques. When you're blocked, when you're drawing, if you're an artist or an illustrator and you're blocked, you just kind of, you know, throw 4 or 5 random words onto a piece of paper and draw what you've just written down. You know, watermelon swimming in an ocean in the air with flying crosses. You know, you throw out something that makes no sense, but you actually draw it, and it's a good kind of drawing exercise. So anyone want to rewind that and just listen again and try it out, go right ahead. Let me know the results in the comments. Back to this book. Great anchor shot here, right? Image style kind of storytelling here. Cool shot. Wolverine looking pretty pissed off and angry, attacking who I now know is the professor, who, according to Weapon X, is the man who conducted the experiment on Wolverine. Later on, it's going to get very murky, and maybe that changes. I'm not up to speed on all of that, but I know some aspects of Wolverine's origins, and others I'm confused on. We get another cool flashback here where it seems, you know, we know by now that Wolverine and Sabretooth kind of worked together in the past as some sort of maybe CIA agents or something similar to that, secret agents. And I guess that's what we're seeing here. But once again, just to give us a clue that it's, you know, that flashback, maybe hallucinatory aspect of Wolverine having broken memories and not knowing specifically if this is actually true or not. And again, you know, in reality, no spikes should be coming out of walls and stuff. So that clues you in as to kind of the fragile nature of you know, how pertinent and real the flashback is. I'll put it that way. Sabretooth looking more like Sabretooth here. Marc Silvestri's kind of toned it down on the ears as compared to past issues. I think he's just looking himself here. Maybe that had to do with the bi-weekly schedule, right? And just quick pencils and the inker interpreting a bit too much. Can't fault him, right? The guys were working really fast. I don't know if I mentioned this before. This ad was drawn by Erik Larsen. I feel like at a small size. And in a weird way, I didn't like this when I saw this originally in the comics. And that's what I mean. Like, I wasn't super fond of Erik Larsen right away, but eventually I definitely warmed up to his style. And I look back at it now, you know, and this looks great to me. I love all the storytelling here. Very cool. The military, you know, this militia here, their military gear and stuff, all very authentic, I think. Everything, you know, becomes off kilter with the way he draws the panels. You know, the actual, you know, anatomy and illustration of real people, I think, is very effective, right? They're not comic booky people. You could almost believe on this page that it's just kind of a war comic maybe, or a detective comic with these two guys, secret agent comic, something like that, right? So there's a real naturalness, I guess, to his characters, even when they're getting shot here. Wolverine and Sabretooth always look a little more extreme with the, you know, exaggerated shadows on the eyes and stuff. But all these guys look just like real people, is what I would say. And again, the clues to the hallucinations, now wires and stuff, reminiscent of a few issues ago, the spikes coming out. So as a kid, when I saw this again, I thought it was super weird. Having read those prior issues that I did not read as a kid. So I think that's where that first appears. And then this is kind of extrapolating from that idea. And then shit just gets crazy, right? And Wolverine just like, we're talking about anchor shots again. This one's great. Wolverine just going nuts. Funny enough, not using his claws, but using guns. So kind of a rare instance of Wolverine using guns here. And just the mane is insane. And, you know, just how much Silvestri, you know, can pull it in and then exaggerate and push it out when he does stuff like this, right? And just go all out, because he's a master of the anatomy. And like economy of drawing, once again, check out the feet. Literally just draws the contour of the feet, doesn't draw the toes. And it totally works. Sorry, not the toes, but let's say the nails or just anything. He really just shorthands it there. And to me, it works really well. Like, we're not going to spend... This all looks so cool that I'm not going to worry about him not detailing the feet quite as much, you know, as the other stuff, because that's what we're looking at. We're not looking at feet. For all the criticism artists have gotten for not drawing feet. I mean, look, he's drawn a few here, but most times they get cut off, you know. There aren't that many feet depicted in comics. Unless you get into like the fetish stuff, but I don't even know if that exists in comic book form. Sorry, it probably does. I take that back. It probably does. Another great anchor shot, pretty much the same as the last page, right? A little more detail on the feet here. But yeah, kind of recycling the same kind of composition here, funny enough. Let me just look back on that. Yeah, it's pretty darn similar, right? Not that it's a problem. If the pages had been sitting next to each other, maybe that'd be a little more off-putting, or maybe that would look cool too. I don't know. We'd have to see that. Another great depiction though. And, you know, again, at this point, the synergy between Silvestri and Dan Green, I think Dan Green is being really darn faithful to what Silvestri's putting down in the pencils. You know, like, if you look at this, he's starting to get, like, he's still doing rough hatching, but it's kind of a Jim Lee style of hatching, right? And I think it's still kind of cool and works. It's when he starts to clean it up and make those lines really sharp and straight and West Coasty that he kind of loses me a little bit. But this is still just great stuff here. We still got some big, bold lines, some bold hatching. I like it. And so Wolverine busts out of that flashback. Jubilee's been pricked in the finger, and we get kind of a little bit of foreshadowing of whatever Shiva is. So we see that some sort of mold that we've got here, right? Nondescript, not very specific. So it can be implied, though, that something was sitting in there and now that is opened and whatever was in there has left, right? So I guess that's kind of what they're pushing for a little bit. And of course, we're going to find out next month. The answers begin, and we'll find out more about what's going on with Shiva and this mysterious manufacturing plant out in the northern Alaska. I'm sorry, northern Alberta, Canada, right? So there you have it. That's Wolverine 48. Great issue art-wise, story-wise as well. And obviously next week we'll be reviewing part 2 of the Shiva scenario. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Those of you who have subscribed and are still watching, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support. Those of you who are not subscribed yet, please do so below. It really helps out the channel, helps us grow, helps get us out there to more people who like comic books just like us. Thank you everybody out there for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.